Jane, how we met. We were freshmen. It was 1955. We were freshmen at Star Valley High School, and we happened to share an English class together. And after a day or two or three had passed in there, why, I had noticed that there was a slender, blonde girl, cute girl, that had long blonde hair. And so from then on, when I write my history, I mean, I made a note that there's more about this girl as time goes on, but I always refer to her as the girl with the long blonde hair. And so I don't remember only one other class for sure. We may have had an English class together, but another one, but we did have a speech class together. And we were probably juniors, I think. And that was fun because you had more interaction, and we went out to Laramie to the state speech meet. So by the time, we had dances all the time then, which was nice because you could get close to the girls. I liked that. So anyway, one of the nice things about her is she never valued herself as being better than anyone else. So if you ask her to dance, I don't care if you were a good-looking guy like me or if you were one or two of the boys that maybe were a little less presentable. She never turned anybody down. We always had dance cards, 15 dances, had real music and all that stuff, but you fill out a dance card. And she was a great collector of memorabilia. And if you look back through some of her high school stuff that she's collected, there's dance cards that's actually got my name on them, 2 or 3 of them. So anyway, we knew each other in high school. I never did ask her for a date or anything like that, but I was always pretty timid, being raised with a family of boys and sometimes where there weren't hardly any girls, so I was pretty shy. Digress just a little bit. I got better when I moved over to Grace. There was a girl over there that there was a guy chasing her. She'd like looking for a reason to get rid of him, and so she took right up with me. Her name was Jolene Rasmussen, and we were a thing for probably 30 days. We enjoyed some time together, but it really, really made this kid, well, not like me. So we're in the gym one day, and he's shooting baskets, and I didn't realize he was quite that easy to upset, and he'd missed 2 or 3 foul shots in a row, and I made some wisecrack that I probably shouldn't have made. He comes storming right over there. He said, "Would you like to go outside?" Well, I said, "Well, not very bad." And he said, "Well, then shut up." And I said, "Oh, come on, don't get all tight. Let's go outside." I said, "No, Gerald, if you want to take a swing at me, do it right here. And we'll do it right here." Well, fortunately he backed off because he'd have cleaned my clocks. He was about as tall as I am and 50 pounds heavier. So anyway, I'm digressing. So then we ended up down at Utah State, both of us as students down there. Laura Lee worked in the library, basically put herself through school working in the library. And since I commuted from home, I spent quite a bit of time in the library studying, and occasionally would exchange greetings with her and one thing and another. But that changed a little bit winter quarter before I went on my mission, and so I'm going to let Sammy read this because I'll tear up if I do. So
Saying I won't?
So read it nice and loud so they can hear.
Okay. There were quite a few Star Valley kids that I attended high school with attending USU, and it was fun to get reacquainted with them. One was Laura Lee Hokinson. There's the girl with the long blonde hair again. She had a part-time job in the library, and since I often went to the library to study, we would occasionally cross trails and make time to visit. Our visits became more regular during winter quarter, 1960. The reason, she had a math class that she claimed she needed a little help with. Besides helping her with math, I would sometimes ask her for a date, and she would always politely decline because she had a steady boyfriend. Then I would tease her about her Gentile boyfriend and that she had been dating since her senior year of high school. By this time, my mission papers were in, and when I knew where I was going, she took the mission address and said she would write, which she never did. Anyway,
I'll stop her for a minute, Jerry. You're reading play fast anyway.
that's true.
She wrote that on a little slip of paper, and that was still in her purse when she died. But she never did write. But it was there anyway. Okay, go ahead. Don't read so fast. We're not in a race.
Anyway, we had fun and enjoyed the visits. Yes, she did pass the math class. Now the question is, did she really need help with the math, or was it just an excuse to spend time with this good-looking young man who was about to leave for 2 years to serve a mission? Recently, I asked our daughter Natalie that question. She promptly replied she needed help with the math. I'll let you decide.
So where were okay. There's more for Sammy to read here. So, but don't read it too fast, dear.
I'll do my best. Okay. Late August, 63, I petitioned for a weekend off. I had a date with a girl in Montpelier for a Friday night, and I wanted to go on over to Star Valley for a couple of days. I had not been to Star Valley since we moved in '57. I had this feeling that I would like to see if I could find the girl with the long blonde hair. The Star Valley Independent at that time mailed its weekly newspaper to the missionaries serving in the States. During my mission, I was the recipient of this weekly paper. That is how I know that the girl with the long blonde hair had left to serve a mission in November 1961. That meant that she would be home in the spring of '63. I thought that if I could find her, it would be fun to visit with her. I stopped at her home Saturday mid-morning, and her mother said I would find her at work at the Peter Pan Cafe in downtown Thane. She was very surprised to see me since we had no contact with each other since March 1960. We had a good visit while I enjoyed a donut and glass of milk. Not a lot happening at the Peter Pan mid-morning. I asked her if she would like to do something that evening, if she didn't already have plans. She replied yes, she would like to. Persistence pays off. She finally agreed to go on a date with me. As we later looked back on the events of that weekend, she said that was the only Saturday that summer that she didn't have a date. Was it coincidence, luck, or divine intervention that put me there that Saturday? I prefer to think it was divine intervention. Thane had a movie house, so we went to the movie Spartacus and had a good visit after the movie well into the night, or maybe I should say early morning. We had a lot of catching up to do. As I lay in bed that night, thoughts came into my mind that this is the one special lady. She was scheduled to speak Friday at the Fairview Ward Sacrament meeting that Sunday evening, along with Doll Gardner, another returned missionary and classmate of ours.
Who was in hot pursuit, I might add.
I said I would like to hear you preach and asked if I could pick her up and take her to the meeting. She agreed. That would qualify as a second date. As I was also a Star Valley returned missionary, the bishop thought I should have a chance to share my testimony, and so it was. As I listened to Laura Lee share her mission experiences and her testimony, thoughts again came into my mind. She really is special. The proposal. As we visited more that evening, the unmistakable impression came into my mind. Before you leave tonight, you need to let her know how you feel about her. So I did. I asked her to marry me. I'm sure the timing of this proposal was definitely a surprise. As the surprise wore off, we shared our thoughts and expectations about what marriage could and should mean. She seemed quite agreeable to my proposal. Now, dear reader, if this proposal seems a little hasty, please keep this in its proper context. I had known this girl since we were freshmen in high school. Yes, she was physically very attractive, but there was a special spirit that radiated from her that made her not just attractive, but beautiful inside and out.
Good.
Now I'm gonna cry. Allie, do you want to take over?
Where are you at?
Right there.
Since I was a teenager, I had made as part of my night and morning prayers that I could find the right girl to marry. By right, I mean a girl who had a strong commitment to the church and that we could be compatible together. I did have this unmistakable impression that she was the right one. We now have 6 children that all wholeheartedly agree, yes, she was the right one. Since I am writing about the events of this weekend many years later, and Laura Lee is not available to give her version, I will include here the way she explained that weekend to our son Richard.
Your turn.
Oh, my turn. All right. I might have to have Luke read it for me.
That's permissible.
Where is he?
We are related closely
Here,
to the
sit right
lambs.
here for a second.
Your Spence can spit me.
Okay. Mom
Read it,
told me,
read it so they can understand it.
okay. Mom told me this story one night about how she and Dad got engaged. I have written it as though Mom is telling the story just as she told it to me. It was the middle
Whoop.
of...
You're not loud
Hold
enough.
up a second. I'll try and read it, but you stand in line.
Cass can read it if you.
It was the middle of August of 1963. I had returned home from my mission at the Gulf States earlier that year in May. I was back home in Thane, Wyoming, working for the summer, earning money to pay for my last year of college at Utah State University. I was working as a waitress in the Peter Pan Cafe in Thane, which who named that place? I knew Steve Olson from high school. We went to high school for 3 years together. I always thought that Steve was a nice young man. Steve had moved away to Grace, Idaho before our senior year of high school. After high school, I renewed acquaintances with Steve at Utah State. I worked in the library at the circulation desk, and he would come and tease me every chance he got. He also used to help me with my math. I wasn't ever very good at math, and he was more than willing to help me with it. I knew that Steve had gone on a mission to the East Central States Mission, and I actually left for my mission while he was still gone. So I knew who Steve was, and I knew what type of an individual he was. I wanted to give a little background before I tell the following story. It's a bright summer August day, and I had no idea when I went to work that day how my life would change. I was waiting tables in the cafe when Steve Olson strode into the cafe. I would learn later that he had been down to my house looking for me, and when he found out I wasn't home, he asked my mother where he could find me. My mother joked later that if she had known what Steve had in mind, she wouldn't have told him where I was. I think Grandma said that on many occasions. Anyway, Steve walked into the cafe like he owned the place. He sat down and I walked over to take his order. I asked him what he wanted, and with a big grin he said, "I'd like a cup of coffee and a donut." Well, I was so mad at him because I knew he was a returned missionary. I looked back at him questioningly and said, "Okay." I went in the back and I was still mad at him for what he ordered. When I came back out to give him water, he said, "I guess you better hold the coffee and just bring me the donut." He did request that I bring him a glass of milk to wash the donut down. Well, when I brought him his donut and milk, he asked me what I was doing that night and if I'd be interested in going on a date with him. I said that I'd be glad to go, and he said that he'd pick me up later that evening. When Steve picked me up, we decided to go to the movies. Spartacus was playing in the local theater, so we went to that movie. I really enjoyed speaking with Steve. We talked about a lot of things, and it was just fun to be with him. We spent more time talking that evening than we did at the movie. We had a lot to catch up on as we hadn't seen each other for quite some time. We talked about the past, our missions, and what the future would hold. He asked me what I was doing for church the next day, and I told him that I was speaking in the Osmond Ward and that he was welcome to come with me and listen to me speak. He said he would love to. When Steve took me home that night and we had visited for quite some time, he walked me to the door and then he kissed me. See, this is the part that he didn't write. Needless to say, that kind of took me by surprise. I walked into the house and my brother Paul was sitting there in the living room, and he looked at me and asked, "What happened to you?" I told him, "He kissed me." Paul said, "Surely you've been kissed before," and I replied, "Never like that though." At that point, I think I was what you would call Twitter-pated. I floated to my bedroom and went to sleep with dreams of this dashing young man. Steve picked me up the next evening. In those days, you went to sacrament meeting later in the evening, and we went to the Osmond Ward. And when we got there, the bishopric found out that Steve was with me, and so they asked him to speak as well, which he graciously agreed to. I really enjoyed his remarks and was amazed at how good he was at speaking on such short notice. We spent the rest of the evening together, and it was during that conversation that he asked me to marry him. I was stunned and yet not overly surprised at the same time. I told him that I would have to think about it a little bit more, and he said that was fine, but we both left with the understanding that we would get married. We agreed to write one another until I got back down to Cache Valley to start school. He told me where I could find him when I came down to Cache Valley for school, and then he left. As you all know, we were married a few months later on December 18th, 1963 in the Logan, Utah Temple. We've had a wonderful life together and raised a beautiful family.
Good.
That's the way she told it.
I've heard that version.
So see, I didn't make it up.
No, you did not. That's the version that I know,
Yep.
not Dad's.
Well, I think the version's good together. I think you get a good
Yeah.
understanding of both and get a thought from both of them.
So, and I'll entertain any questions.
Sadie has a question.
Didn't you tell me once that was the only weekend all summer she didn't have a date lined up?
Yeah.
That's what you said.
Yep. Yeah. Well, when
Did she
She
break
was-
off the other ones later that summer?
She cancel?
she was very close with her brother Paul growing up. Oddly enough, she was a lot more of an outdoors person than he was, but they both liked flowers and stuff like that. And he had a good friend named Bill. I've told some of you this story. Bill's family was in the grocery store business. So anyway, Bill had a Volkswagen. The three of them loaded up in that Volkswagen and headed to the East Coast. And they'd stop at a town, and he'd go into a grocery store and go in the back and find the people and say, "What are you throwing away today?" And that's how they got their grub for the trip back. But I think that ate up most of 3 weeks because they were clear back to the early history of the church back there, the Mayflower, and seeing some of that stuff. And then they stopped like at Kirtland and Nauvoo. But anyway, that ate up part of her summer right there. So, but yeah, Dal Gardner, he thought he was going to take her to church that evening. She kind of broke a date with him, I guess. But there was one of the missionaries that she served with that he was after her. So yeah, I thought, you better take advantage of what's there in front of you. So you get these impressions. Well, thanks for your patience. You're all the result of that, either directly or indirectly. So I will just say this. I'm very proud of all of you. I'm proud of your industry. I think it's a genetic thing, really. When I look at my great-grandparents, my Grandpa Lamb, my Grandpa Olson, and then go back great-grandpa James Olson, they were very industrious people. And I'm proud of the fact that all of you are anxiously engaged in a good cause. Not only just for yourself, but you help others. And I think that's just really important in terms of how we live our life. So I'm not just proud of my 6 kids, but I couldn't be any more pleased with my son-in-laws. I love them and appreciate them, and my daughter-in-laws, both of them. So I've been blessed. There's a metaphor I think of about baseball or softball, where the idea is you start out from home and you want to return home. Well, if I look at my life, I think I was born on third base, and all I had to do was keep it going. And people ask me sometimes, where did you get your testimony, or how long have you had your testimony? And I've thought about that a little bit. Years ago I thought about that, and I just came to the conclusion, I've always had that testimony. I came with it. Yes, I've done some things to push it along and help it, but I've had a good life. I've been very fortunate. And so, but the best part of it is my grandkids and great-grandkids, 2 of them, and people I love and just associate with. So know that you're loved and appreciated, and Grandpa is proud of what you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you, Grandpa.
What?
That's a thank you.
Oh,
Thanks for sharing that with us.
thank you. Well, I thought they'll read this in my history because they'll feel obligated to read that history, but maybe they'd like to know it now, not 10 years from now. So, anyway, that's the idea.